life form. Looks like it's been dead a long time. Fossilized. Looks like it's grown out of the chair. Bones have been outward. Like he exploded from inside.
I wonder what happened to the rest of the crew.
Hello, and welcome to the Comic Book Bears Presents The Bear Cave of Terror. I'm your hairy heavy homo and horror fan host, Steve Morey. Each week, here in the Bear Cave, I invite a horror-loving guest who brings with them one of their favorite scary movies. It can be classic, gory, trashy, obscure, well-known, out in deep space, or something probably still banned in Britain. In other words, a thrilling work of cinematic terror that we think you might enjoy. In each episode, we'll dig into the flesh and bone of the film, highlighting our favorite scary moments, as well as stories and details from beyond the screen, all while our guest imparts their deep, and possibly concerning, love for this week's frightful vision unto you, our dear listener. And with me today in the Bear Cave is one familiar face and a new face. And I'm going to introduce the new person visiting us in the cave today, and that is Mr. Vince Tenebra. Vince, nice to have you here.
Pleasure to be here. This is my one of my favorite topics to bore people to death with.
I'm so excited to get into this for sure, 100%. This is one of my favorite movies too, and we'll tell you what that movie is. But first, I also want to introduce Mr. Bill Zanowitz, my host and boss and all sorts of things from the Comic Book Bears.
Well, Steve, thank you for letting me enter the Bear Cave of Terror for the third time, especially with a movie that's a favorite. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what is this movie that we're going to be talking about? I mean, if you read the subtitle when you download the episode, you probably know, but we are going to be talking about 1979's Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. And Vince, why Alien? Why is that your movie?
I had always been a fan of sci-fi when I was a kid, watched Twilight Zone and Outer Limits with my dad, watched Star Trek on day one, loved science fiction from the time I was a kid, and horror, more like the Universal monsters, the Gothic horror type monsters were kind of a big part of my life growing up too. So those black and white films and things of that nature. When Alien came out, I really didn't know much about the movie other than it was sci-fi, outer space, alien monster movie. When I went that night to see it, it ended up being probably my most favorite movie of any genre, anytime. So that's why I never use it for a password recovery, because everybody knows what my favorite movie is. And it held up over the years. I got every version of it, from VHS to video disc to the original DVDs, Blu-rays, quadrilogies, every version of it. And I was so interested in how they put it together because visually it stands up. It is just a tour de force of practical effects and imagination that was realized in a way that was so detailed you could compare it to 2001 Space Odyssey and Her. I mean, anything that you could say had so much detail in it, this movie had it, and it captivated you. It also scared the pants off a lot of people who ran out of the theater, some even throwing up, which said to me, job done. That's what you're supposed to do. You move people. So that's why it's my favorite movie.
No, that's great. It's great to hear something that bridges genres together. I mean, you were a big sci-fi fan, and here's a sci-fi movie that is also one of the most classic examples of horror, like modern horror that we have. And Bill, of course, you love Alien too. What about Alien sort of brings out this joy in you?
I have to echo a lot of the things that Vince said about, the high quality of the production, the scare factor. But I also think with this particular film it is an extraordinarily well acted film. There is no cast member that's a weak link in there. And it's also very surprising because you have very different acting styles among the performers in the film, and somehow it gels together. Maybe because the acting styles are so different, you would buy that with a crew of people that, apart from the mission that they're tasked with, or otherwise they would never be together in the same room. For me, that's a big factor. And there's also, a lot of sentimentality attached to this too, because when I first saw this, it was my second R-rated film. I was not quite 12 years old yet. I was still 11 years old when this came out. Saw it on the first weekend, and Vince and I have a story about that, which we'll get in a little later. And my first one, you can check out our podcast. I've told the story. It was Cheech and Chong's Up in Smoke. It's a very funny story. But, for Alien, there was this element of like, ooh, I'm seeing an R-rated film. My parents clearly saw that post Star Wars, I was devouring everything science fiction. At that point, from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Superman, anything that was within that realm, I was devouring. And I came in with a little bit of knowledge about the film in advance because of Starlog magazine, because I would just pour through that when that came out. And in the 2 or 3 months leading up to Alien, there were, a couple of articles. So you had a general sense of the storyline that this was what I had thought was an expedition. It was proved a little bit wrong, but that it was a journey to a planet and something went terribly wrong. In terms of the scare factor, I do think this film proved that unexplored space is the best haunted house you can ask for. It really is. Like, everything worked in its favor. It came out at the right time. It had the right director. I can't imagine any other director shepherding this and that it would have been as effective. There was just a brand new leading lady who had an impact on cinema for years to come. It just seemed that there was just a confluence of events that just worked perfectly for the film. And how about you, Steve? Let's turn it on you.
Yeah.
Like, what was your introduction to Alien?
So Alien was one of those movies where I was maybe a little bit younger than you when I first saw it. It was one of those movies that I had seen the box art. And if you recall, the box art was just black with sort of an egg. It didn't give much away. The description on the back of the box, obviously, some people out in the middle of space encounter a horrible monster. We were able to rent it on VHS. And I just absolutely loved it. And of course, afterwards I got to see Aliens, the sequel, and that just kind of solidified it for me. And in fact, I had played the Aliens video game before I got to see either of the movies. So I kind of knew what to expect visually, but this one, the suspense, the realism, I think that's the big thing. They put so much detail into the ship, into just the most innocuous items and minutia of these people being on a company ship out in space. That immediately hooked me because it looked so real, even though it was set hundreds of years in the future and it's clear science fiction. But just a wonderful, wonderful movie. But I had the pleasure of actually seeing it on the big screen for the first time right before the release of Alien Romulus. They had released it nationwide for special screenings, kind of like what they did last summer with Jaws. And they would have a new introduction from Fede Alvarez, who had been the director of Alien Romulus, where he kind of introduced different elements of it and talked about it. It was just really fun to see it on the big screen for the first time, and nothing was lost. I mean, I enjoyed every second of it, and the pan and scan VHS and the collector's edition DVDs and the Blu-rays, just getting to see it huge on screen. I almost was able to capture the feeling that I'm sure you guys had the first time you saw it in a movie theater. Almost, but I can't go back in time, unfortunately, but I got to take what I got, and I loved it.
Actually,
So,
we saw it in 70 millimeter You saw it in the 4K restoration, right? So
Yep.
it looks like a brand new movie to me. When I look at Alien in 4K, I'm like stunned that the detail work in it is not revealing to be cheap or kitschy or anything. It is somebody's imagination, well, H.R. Giger's imagination gone awry and put into a structured movie that just kind of layers it on more and more and more as you go on to the biggest, I think, reveal for me. And we could talk about the chest burster scene, obviously, because it is an iconic scene that kind of changed everybody's mind on that movie because it was a slow build, right? But the reveal of the xenomorph before it kills Brett with the teeth and the slime and the jaw coming out, I stood shocked in that movie theater. I was 19 or 20 years old. I stood shocked in that movie theater going, who in the hell thought of this? I'm thinking this is one of the most frightening things I have ever seen in my life, and I want to close my eyes, but I can't. So it just holds up so well in every version.
Absolutely. Well, before we get too much further, because we got plenty to talk about with this movie, lots of wonderful things to impart, I'm going to do a quick summary for the very few people listening who have not seen this film. So essentially, this movie starts out a crew who are basically long-haul truckers in space, are coming off of a mission of moving some mining materials and ore, and are woken from hypersleep due to some kind of distress signal. And the ship wakes everybody up and sends them to this planet where the distress signal is coming from. They land on the planet. A few of them go out, find an alien spaceship wrecked, along with a corpse of some unknown alien species, and a cargo hold filled with hundreds of eggs. And unfortunately, one of their number ends up opening one of the eggs by mistake, and a face hugger creature comes out, latches itself onto his face. And after they take him back aboard the ship, they realize that the face hugger was doing more than just give him a nice long kiss. And the rest of the film, we are given the opportunity to watch several crew members meet very grisly ends with some extra surprises, twists, turns, and just a final act that is one long stress stream of craziness. So speaking about all of that, one of the big things I think we've all mentioned is just the way that this film was realized and how much was put into it to make it look as realistic as possible and just bring out the best performances of these actors, just everything. What, for either of you, was probably the best or maybe like the most important way that this film was different from sci-fi and horror that came before it, and what effect did that have on the viewer and on the rest of Hollywood?
I think the female-led aspect to it, and it's interesting because if you look at 20th Century Fox at the time, some of their big films around this time were very female-centered. The Turning Point, Julia, Norma Ray, you never lump that in with them, but it does make sense at the same time. I'm just thinking of like any science fiction that I had seen prior to this, Lost in Space. The women were never in a front-facing position effectively. And there was some, I hate using the word novel about it because I think it's kind of diminishes the importance of that. But, I can say my 11-year-old ass had never seen anything like that.
For me, same thing. It was the female heroine was a story that would be a mom saving a kid at school, or something like that. It was never someone who was going to fight an alien monster with flamethrower in her hand and ready to blow up a ship in order to save the universe. And Sigourney Weaver's play on that was such a revelation to take a role in action movies to say women are capable of doing this. And it actually pissed off a lot of men, right? Because she was written as a male character in the beginning. Ridley Scott changed that after she auditioned for some roles and said he was going to go a different way with it. And I think we're all glad she did because she changed the future of science fiction. Almost every science fiction, alien monster, predator type of thing ends up with a woman saving the day these days, So she really effectively did that in her portrayal of that role, which obviously, in Aliens, she was nominated for an Academy Award for the role of Ripley in that one. So it resonates with people. She drove the fear in that movie, not the monster. The monster is there and you're afraid of it, but she made you feel like, yeah, this is terrifying.
And you can feel her terror, but there's no damsel in distress aspect to it. She's scared to death, but she's getting the job done. She's
That's
doing
right.
what she can do.
She's not putting on a front. And I think Ridley Scott did a really interesting job in contrasting her and the other characters. Almost everybody had some focus moments. There's a great scene relatively early on when they first land on the planet and before they head out, where Scott focuses the camera's attention on Lambert. Veronica Cartwright just sitting in her seat, smoking a cigarette. She's fully in focus while there's conversations going on behind her. Tom Skerritt's Dallas is talking with Ash just to kind of see what the planet's like, what the atmosphere's like. And you just really focus on her and her face, and just she's almost like, I don't want any of this. I don't want anything to do with this. This is not cool. She's just listening in going, I don't have a good feeling about it. Meanwhile, Ripley a lot of it is all business. She's just kind of, hey, we got to get this done. I'm second in command on this ship. Get your jobs done. Do what you're supposed to do. She's the one who initially doesn't want to even let them back into the spaceship after the initial attack with the facehugger. She's like, no, we got to quarantine you outside. And I have to say, I do love the extended edition because you get more of their characters. You also get some special scene a little bit later on with Dallas that I love. But yeah, I mean, she is not everybody's best friend at the beginning. And in fact, she's not even given as much screen time, or given the focus of the screen time, until the halfway mark. And then you start noticing as she comes up a little bit more in focus and she's more front and center. And you see what she can do. And I think that's really interesting that Ridley Scott wanted to show that, and Dan O'Bannon and company, when they wrote that character, how they kind of just, built up to her, or to Ripley's starring turn.
Well, she definitely shows that right from the start as well. She's confident in checking out where they are and reminds Lambert, we're not where we're supposed to be. Lambert that has very little tolerance for any kind of thing like that. And that scene with the cigarette where, Dallas says, you're going here, Gary, and she goes, not me, but she's going anyway, right? And so Lambert's that she's not, I'm going to call her, she's not weak either. I mean, she's well, first, if you go further into the lore of Aliens, she's actually been converted from a man to a woman, according to James Cameron. It's if you look at the text on the reports of the, when Ripley is in Aliens in the conference room, her profile comes up and it says she had a sex transition operation in a planet years before.
Now, Steve, this was why when I went to see Alien Romulus with Vince, it was like seeing a baseball game with the third base coach for the New York Yankees. That's what you get.
Next time you watch Aliens, freeze that and read through it. She is a complicated individual too. You don't get all that backstory from her, but let's just get out of here. Let's take our chances. She's upset and everything. Ripley's the one who says, no, we can't. We have to do it this way. We have to kill this thing and get it out into space so we all could survive. Plans don't go the way that you want them to, but she is in control. I think the part where she goes out and talks to Parker and Brett, and they're like busting her chops, she's not going to take their crap. She tells them that, just get it done. And when they say, we have this plan, we're going to force it into the airlock and then flush it out, they go, who goes into the vents? I do. No, not you. Right? That's what Dallas says. I'll go. But she volunteered. Like, it was like, I'm doing it. there's something about this woman. I didn't expect the ending to go the way it did, but there was something about this woman that said that she was not going to take any crap on this mission.
100%. And, and she's still, through all of that, trying to stay one step ahead of the xenomorph who's just murdered everybody else in the crew. She's set the ship to self-destruct. For some reason, all of the gas jets in the entire ship decide to go off at once, and that's what the last 10 minutes are. She's having to run around in smoke. She still insists on saving that cat. That damn cat is responsible for multiple jump scares in this movie. She still is like, you know what? I gotta get my Jonesy. He's too cute and he's dumb as rocks, but I gotta save him. And that right there is kind of like, that is an extra level of endearment to Ripley's character, that regardless of the horrors around her, she's going to save that fucking cat no matter what, even if it's trying its hardest to not get saved.
Something I think we also need to talk about in terms of what distinguishes the film is the nature of a used universe for science fiction. We had flashes of that in Star Wars, particularly Tatooine and, the Millennium Falcon itself being a piece of junk. But then you get to the Death Star and then you get to Yavin and everything's shiny. So it didn't go full throttle. The Nostromo looks like it's been around a while. It's still fully functioning, but it's not, it's not a top of the line vehicle anymore. And I don't think we really saw that. Vince, you had mentioned 2001 and, talk about shiny and new. And right. I think with a lot of things that you saw in science fiction up to then, there was post-apocalyptic with Planet of the Apes, but that's something different. I mean, that's
that's different. That's destruction of everything.
And I really thought that was, that's something that resonated with me. And also something as a kid that I picked up on was, for the last 14 minutes, there's almost no dialogue. It's all action and reaction. And even as an 11-year-old kid, that registered with me that, they were doing that to suit the film, to suit the story. Nobody would be talking at that time. Anyway.
Who's she got to talk to? Her cat? Yeah. She wants to be quiet.
She's got Jones. That's it. Maybe that's why maybe that's why she needed to get that damn cat.
Yeah, I think the fact that she had to turn around, go back to the bridge, try to shut down the self-destruct, which didn't work, and then get back to where she was, knowing that creature was there, she had no choice, right? She had to either face it down or get around it some way. And she did leave Jonesy behind for a bit, and I guess the alien didn't like the taste of it or didn't want to eat it. But my feeling was the alien left it there so she would get back for it, knowing it's an intelligent creature. It looked at the doorways. It knew where she was going, right? And it went there.
Kind of going back to the idea of the lived-in universe, the design work, I want to say it was Ron Cobb did the ship interiors.
And some of the ship designs, too.
There was a whole group, a whole department that worked on the semiotics in this movie. Those are the symbols for everything. The symbols were perfectly designed to be understandable. This is the future where people don't need to be able to read a lot. They can just use the symbols, and you can tell, the suits are that way. The ladder is that way. Over there is medical. Over there is cafeteria. Like, all of these things are there. All of the keyboards and all sorts of switches, like everything.
Yeah.
There's just symbols for everything, and it looks real. It looks like something that people could understand, but it's not given somebody's not standing there explaining it to you. Nothing in this ship is being explained. The movie doesn't sit there going, okay, well, we've got to go and do this, and this is how this works, and this is how that works, and look at this new thing that we have that's really cool. The closest they come to it is the air density sensor or something when they're first trying to find the young alien. But everything about this is just taken for granted. These are people who are coworkers in a ship that's been around for a long time. They just want to get home. They don't need to explain everything. And the world is fully realized that they're in.
But the horror aspect of this movie starts from the time they leave the ship. Sandstorm, on a foreign planetoid. There's no record of it. There's a derelict spaceship. Let's not forget about the sexual aspects of this movie. I don't know if it fell on the deaf ears of 11-year-old, but as a 20-year-old, I saw it. I mean, the ship openings look like...
I don't think it fully registered, but,
right?
I didn't necessarily appreciate the rape element to it, but I definitely appreciated the impregnation element to it. That definitely caught me. And I could understand, because that's something men don't face.
No,
normally.
But the creature itself, the shape of its head, the force of the mouth coming out and penetrating somebody's head or something like all that Geigerism, which was very, if you've seen the book that he had published, a lot of this imagery, and that the studio turned down beginning and said, no, that's just too crazy, wacky, sexual. Mm-hmm. We don't want to do that. And Ridley Scott said, this is frightening. Men are going to shit their pants because of the male rape aspect of this. Men are going to feel vulnerable. They're going to feel horrified by it. So it's going to create an emotion, and then it's just not going to be a monster walking across the screen. They did cut a lot out, made a lot of cuts and everything, like with the tail going between Lambert's legs and stuff like that and everything. There's suggestions that were left behind, but they cut a lot of that out because it was overtly sexual. But the ship designs and the aspects of, the alien architecture and things like that, very Geiger sexual, biomechanical, never seen before in the public eye en masse. Just people who knew his work in Zurich and Europe. That's about it.
There's that one Emerson, Lake and Palmer album cover, and that really was the extent of his mainstream exposure.
What was interesting is that a few years before this came out, Dan O'Bannon and Geiger were both involved in a massive project that never got off the ground, and that's Jodorowsky's version of Dune. And that's where Dan and Geiger sort of connected for the first time, where he got to see all of his art. Because, Geiger was going to be designing Giedi Prime and the Baron Harkonnen and all of that stuff. That was very Giger. And years later, when, Dan O'Bannon finally sold the script to 20th Century Fox, right after Star Wars, everybody was like, get us the next big sci-fi thing. And they need to get some design going. He and Ridley Scott kind of mentioned, hey, there's that Giger guy over in Europe that's pretty dang cool. And the rest is history. It took a lot of fighting to get him on there, but afterwards, his design of the alien creature, which was based on, I want to say the specific portrait or painting was like Necronom 4 or something like that from the Necronomicon book that he had. But it's iconic. There's really nothing like it before that would have been on screen in a sci-fi movie or even a horror movie that was that overtly sexual and terrifying and unique. Just
couldn't even imagine when I saw it how they could possibly do it and make it look so lifelike. I guess that's the question, the term. Realistic. When everything functioning, the lips, the teeth, the drool, the slight shaking of it as it's like approaching. I don't know whose sick mind thought of this, but this is like it for me.
If you could imagine if this didn't get sold to Fox when it did, if this got made a few years before that, it would have been Roger Corman, and none of this would have looked anywhere close.
No, he turned it away, actually. He said, go get yourself a bigger budget and find a different studio, because if you can't, I'll make it for $2 million. You're going to get what I do, though, and luckily they did. And what did it end up costing? Like $19 million to produce or something like that.
The initial budget was like $8.5 million after they had a presentation with his storyboards. And again, that's another famous thing about Ridley Scott is he storyboards his own movies with other visuals that people had provided. I think that they went and justified it jumping up. And that was also a time where there were two other films where the budgets just went crazy. Superman and Star Trek, the motion picture around this. 20th Century Fox making a lot of money with Star Wars, but not as much as they could have because of the agreement with Lucasfilm. I think that probably was a factor in doubling the budget.
Yeah, I can't remember what the final budget, how much it was. It went through several stages. Before production, they did get $10 million. So he had $8.5 million, but but he did get $10 million. To see what they did for that money, the sets that they built and the interiors of the spaceships, the model work that they did, everything was just unbelievable to get it done. In today's adjusted dollars, what are we talking about? From 1980 till now, 4 times that amount of money?
Yeah.
I don't think, but they would do it a lot with CGI these days, so there would be probably not so much set building.
Yeah.
Well, which would be unfortunate, because I think it's the fact that it is built sets, that these are very practical, very solid things, where the actors aren't acting against a tennis ball. They are standing right in front of somebody wearing a suit. Bolaji Badejo, I actually looked up, I found a really great interview with him from Cinefantastique back in 1979. They tracked him down. They were like, hey, you got to wear the alien suit. What was it like being alien? And he said it was a lot of work. It was frustrating as all get out, and it was not comfortable at all. But, I mean, there was a physical person in the suit. And especially in the 70s and the 80s, it was like, nobody wants a rubber suit monster.
Right.
Giger went ahead and built this, this thing for $200,000. There were two suits, apparently. And it would not be the same if it wasn't a dude in a rubber suit. Like, to be honest, it gave physical presence to this alien creature in a way that it looked real and better than anything else that you can imagine. It's not the rubber suit that's the problem. It's how they present the rubber suit.
The cinematography has everything to do with that as well, right? How it's lit, how they photograph it. It has everything to do with how to make it look like it is a real thing. But one of the things that I think that permeate the movie, the soundtrack itself, I mean, the last 14 minutes is insane. It's just blaring lights and strobes and sirens, and enough to crack your eardrums if you saw it in the movie theater. The soundtrack aesthetic from beginning to end is one of the eeriest things I've ever heard, and highly recognizable to me. If I hear it, I know what it is. So the ship itself had sort of a heartbeat to it. And as the scenes got more tense, that got louder. The eeriness of the music behind it was a masterpiece. So for soundtracks, it's not one you're going to listen to like at a party, but if you are interested in sci-fi soundtracks, like there used to be a channel on XM radio. It was about movies. Cinema was called. And around Halloween, they would play horror and sci-fi soundtracks the whole time. And anytime Alien came up, it was like, oh, this is a must listen to, because it evokes memories of scenes that were frightening, and that music itself kind of is frightening too.
Well, and actually that brings me to a question that I ask all the guests. What scene or scenes were for you the scariest? Like, what stuck in your mind immediately, like, oh, that scared the crap out of me, or, this whole moment is pure perfect tension?
Well, I think we have like the one principal answer for this.
Yeah.
I think this is an easy ask.
Well, Bill, what was yours?
Chestburster.
Biggest surprise, and scary and gory and shock and awe, like the peanuts jumped out of my M&Ms, But I think as I'm watching the movie, after I got over that, and there were people that left the theater at that point, and there's stories of people vomiting out in the hallways and stuff. I don't know the one we went to see. The fact is, I think the most frightening image for me is that reveal of the xenomorph when it goes for Brett. I mean, the jump scare and the disgusting gore of the chest burster was shocking. But to see that thing up close, like I said, who the hell would think of something like that?
Yeah.
My mind was bent. It's sort of like, for me, there's an image, the shot. In Jaws, it would be Roy Scheider on the beach, and then that pull back and zoom in at the same time. That is like the most significant image for me for Jaws, And in like The Exorcist, it's when Reagan's on the bed reaching for the ceiling with the blue light behind her. I almost passed out. Forget about the head spinning. That just grabs me. So, the alien's reveal of the full-size xenomorph going after Brett, I think my heart stopped beating for a few minutes.
Yeah.
For me, it was that one.
I also think something has to be said for the fake out at the ending. That was genuinely scary.
Yes.
Right.
That was something that was genuinely scary and so unexpected.
Because you're waiting for something, right? It's like, oh,
you're waiting for something, but also at the same time, you're kind of waiting to exhale, to borrow a phrase. You've been through so much in particularly in the last like 50 minutes. And you're ready, like, okay, oh, and the credits are going to roll. And no, not so quick. I think that was, and not necessarily a jump scare, not necessarily a big jump scare, but it's just, oh God, I was
Whole
creeped
scene
out.
from the time the hand comes out, she goes into the closet to put on the spacesuit, and she's trying to see what it's doing, and she's got to lure it out, and she's singing to herself at her nervousness. You can't help but be scared for her and be frightened to watch what's going to happen next. I mean, it's a great scene.
She's in her underwear. Like, I mean, there's, in terms of being exposed.
Yeah.
And, tastefully exposed. I mean, I'm going to say, like, this is very tasteful woman in her underwear in peril, but just how fragile everything is, that moment is to her. And she doesn't have a lot of options. It's so crazy. And I do have to say, one of the more interesting points from this interview with Badejo, he talks about coming out of the wall, the whole process of him trying to unfold himself. He fell out of that section so many times. They had to do some really interesting editing around it. And also, going back to where the alien comes out and attacks Brett for the first time, they had so much difficulty shooting that scene too, because Ridley Scott was like, oh, I'm going to lower him down on a boom, and he's going to like pull him back up, and it's going to be this whole thing. It'll be this great wide shot, everything. No, Badejo, all the blood rushed to his head, and he had to get down, had to get out of the suit. And so Ridley Scott was like, okay, well, we'll just shoot it with the stunt guy in the other suit. Stunt guy immediately passed out as soon as he got on the boom. So, and then they tried it with a dummy, and the dummy looked stupid. And so there was just all this stuff they tried to do. But eventually what they did, by only revealing parts of the alien, you got the full idea of how big and scary and crazy this thing was. And getting the pharyngeal jaw, which is the secondary mouth, the pharyngeal jaw, when it is revealed, Brett's looking up, and here's the head, the lips part, and it smiles, and then it opens its mouth, and there's another mouth in there, and that moment for me. Oof.
Yeah. I couldn't get that image out of my head driving home, and it was like, I'm thinking, I don't know who kind of sick person thinks of these things, but I have to shake his hand and congratulate him on it was a great movie to me. And it ended up being like, people ask me all the time, what's your favorite movie? I don't have to think about it. Even like with current movies, and there's some really good ones. It is a well-constructed, well-scripted, well-acted, well-designed. All those elements came together perfectly. The test of it is it holds up today. It still holds up today.
It looks like it could have been made recently.
Yeah.
I mean, this movie is 45 years old.
And, you can watch some other studio-created films. Like, even after this, I will always cite Batman Returns. Like, you can practically see the tape on the flats. It's not good. There's some movies that, having this advanced visuals that 4K provides, maybe not the best idea. This one, it looks contemporary. It looks timeless in a sense. Yeah. But Vince, it was interesting when you were saying like the images that stay with you. And I'm thinking of some other images that stay with me. One is Ash's head on the table when they interrogate him. That's always stayed with me. Of course, like a lot of the chest burster sequence.
Yeah.
That stays with you. The space jockey, that stayed with me a lot. And it's also interesting, like as an adult, I find different things creepy. Watching it now, I kind of just squint my eyes when Ash does that really quick jog at the end of his workout.
Yeah.
That is like so creepy. And, oh my God. And, and of course it ties into his character. It's interesting seeing it later. And this is a movie I watch like at least once a year.
Yeah.
There's certain movies. There's a lot of Cary Grant movies, Star Wars. I'll never call it New Hope, Alien, and Jaws. I watch them every year at some point. It's interesting that, the effect that age has on you. and what you perceive as
Yes.
being important.
Just look about you look about the impact about the movie itself. The fact that the franchise has carried forward 50 years, it's amazing that the summer before Romulus came out, it was well received. It was, look, it was a teenage slasher movie in space, and the aliens were the slashers. Yes, I get it. There were some parts of it that were kind of cringy callbacks. I get that too. But you know what? I liked the movie. It was fun. It was scary. It was a new take on it with new blood, so to speak. And then the recent release of Alien Earth, which I was dubious about it because of the premise, but I like Noah Hawley, and I figured he's not going to screw it up. I was happy with it. I thought it was a good story. I don't know how they're going to fit it into what goes on forward. That's for next season, I guess. But it kind of made sense. And there's just not one type of alien in it. So it makes things more interesting too. So, but it's the impetus of that made it a 50-year journey,
Vince, as I know that you're much more in touch with alien fan culture than the other two of us are. From the outside, it seems that there's like a big contingent that are never happy. Like, no matter, like, they just haven't been happy since Aliens. Why do you think that there's a contingent like that?
They want more aliens. I've been on some of those sites and have had good discussions and really bad discussions with people who are just like, I say, look, what you're looking at is a director's vision of it. It's not the movie you want, but it's the movie he made. So either you watch it or you don't. You didn't get the movie you wanted, so now you can just bash it. I think Prometheus, it's got flaws. There's certainly plot holes in it that should have never happened. But you start to think about it after you watch it once or twice. You say, they got people who weren't coming home on that ship. And not all of them had 100% up here. So they did things that they shouldn't have done. The end result is people didn't like it because they didn't see a xenomorph at the end. But the story that Ridley Scott wanted to perpetuate was the androids and the company and this plot going forward that had all of a sudden androids and synthetics making decisions on their own to do things was more frightening than the monsters themselves, which is what I think you saw in Alien Earth. He collaborated with James Cameron, Noah Hawley on that. They collaborated with Fede Alvarez on Romulus to try to get these things to align and not be so disparate anymore. I don't know if we'll get there. But the fan base itself wants to see colonial marines blowing the crap out of xenomorphs and saving people. That's what they want to see. And there's a much bigger, broader story involved here. The reasons why they're there. What's the aspect of this? What is happening on Earth that is different than it is in real life that would make people want to do this? That's real science fiction. You're talking about political aspects and people interactions and things like that. But the fan base doesn't want that. I want Aliens because it was an action-packed, and I love it too. And I would like to see more of that, but I don't want to see it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of that too, like I said, my first exposure to Alien was the Aliens video game, the arcade cabinet game, where you're either Ripley or you're one of the other Marines, and you just kind of walk around with that giant gun thing, just blowing up aliens and shooting chest bursters and all of that stuff. And, a lot of the video games that have since come out over the years have all been more or less related to that aspect of it. There have been some really great ones that are a little bit more contemplative, a lot more stealthy, and call back to the first movie more than anything else. But generally, yeah, that's what I've seen a lot of. A lot of people want the action aspect, but if you go back to this, if you go back to Alien, there are so many things that are implied and set up in there, like the company and how it interacts with the crew, but also how the company interacts with Ash and through Ash. So like the idea of Mother kind of providing these directives from the company saying, crew's expendable, just capture the xenomorph. And even Ripley at one point says it's for the weapons division. That's probably why they want this. It's the weapons division that doesn't care about us. They just care about this creature.
Little crew manifest. He was replaced at like 2 weeks before they left, according to Dallas. Because I just ship out whoever they tell me to, So there was definitely a plot there from the company There was definitely that insidious overlord type of thing happening that, you would think and we'd be much more Star Trek aligned in the future where we want good
No,
for
it's the
everybody.
complete counter to that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Star Trek, they make a big deal on Earth that it's basically there's no class distinctions.
Mm-hmm.
No money, no class
That's kind of like
distinctions.
that's like crucial to a lot of the plot points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the interaction between the characters.
And Alien's Alien is just,
Dirty
what's the
space.
worst aspect of, what's the worst aspect of the 70s and 80s corporate and, blue collar culture is that we're just hauling shit in the future too. And I guess we have health insurance. I guess we might have this, and we're supposed to be paid, but our contracts can basically mean that we don't get paid if we don't do everything the company wants. All sorts of things that you're like, this is not a utopia by any stretch of the imagination. This is people just trying to get by, being out in space for years at a time before they're able to get home, and you just put up with it. That cynicism just makes it very believable.
You could relate to every one of them to some degree in your society, in your family, whatever. And they were basically sent out there to die. Basically, the company knew what they were doing when they rerouted the Nostromo past LV-426. And in case there was going to be an interaction with them, the crew was expendable, and that is why they put a synthetic on board to have no feelings about the crew whatsoever.
And when that's revealed, it's almost like, oh, the company planned this from the beginning. Before they even left the mining station, they knew that this was going to happen. They knew that they were going to be bringing back some kind of something, some kind of sample or creature or who knows what. And if it goes south, well, just have the robot bring it back.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like who do you blame? Who's the real monster here, right? It's the people who are running the company. They're the monsters. The alien is doing what the alien does. It's like putting an alligator on board. It's going to do what it does, and you're going to get eaten or you're going to get hurt, and there's a guy protecting it.
There was a line in Alien Earth that I thought encapsulated that so well, where she's talking about the xenomorphs that, hey, they didn't ask to come here. Just a simple line.
Yeah.
Like that. It's also interesting. I know we're only talking about 79, but it's interesting for me though. All the other Alien films, I've never seen any of them more than once, which is really something. And Alien Resurrection, it took me like 7 years to see that after it was first released. I'm not exactly sure why I see this as so separate from the rest of the franchise,
It definitely
but I
is.
do. And I don't do that with any other dynamic where there's, where there's a film series.
People ask me, what order should I watch the movies in? Should I watch it from Prometheus or now from, Alien Earth and then Prometheus? I go, you know what? The big shock value is the alien itself. So why don't you watch Alien and then go back and watch the prequels and then watch the ones after that? Because, if you've really never invested time in the movie, you've seen all the parodies, you've seen people make fun of it, even a Family Guy or The Simpsons and stuff like that. There's always parodies of, the chest burster. Spaceballs, right? I said, so you have an idea of what you're going to see. Shut the lights off, turn the TV on, get the best copy of Alien you can get, and watch it. Extended version if you can. Watch it first. And I can't believe how many younger friends I have who are like, oh, I've never seen it, or I've never seen the whole thing. And they have come here to sit and watch that movie or the movies with me, even my older friends. So this year I've seen each of those movies like 6 or 7 times already. Because I watch them with people, and they'll ask questions. I say, I won't answer till after it's over, at least what I know about it. And I'm not 100% right on anything I said tonight, other than this movie cannot be denied. I don't care what anybody says. It's always rated in the top 20s of the top either sci-fi or horror movies, and it should be because it belongs there.
I agree. this is one of those movies that I can pull out at any time, and I know that I'm going to have a good time watching it.
Yeah.
I've loved it since the first time I've seen it. The first one I actually saw in the theater was Alien 3, and I remember being so excited reading Entertainment Weekly before it came out and just devouring all the coverage on it. Dark Horse had released Newt's story, like the special edition of Aliens in comic book form, so I got to read sort of a lot of all of that stuff. And finally got to see it in the movie theater, and I was not disappointed. I actually really liked David Fincher's Alien 3. I think it's great for what it was in the early 90s, because the 90s is a very interesting movie scene.
Yeah.
But I love that too. And since then, I have seen every single Alien in the theater when it's come out, and I've never been really disappointed with anything, just because there's so much there to love. Yeah,
I don't think you'll ever get the full horror aspect of the first Alien back again. I mean, that's lightning in a bottle. It happened. If you've never seen it, please, you should see it. And like I said, you should do it in a darkened room with some popcorn. Even if you have seen it before, going back and revisiting it, it doesn't take much away knowing what's going to happen. Because it's still, the visuals are still frightening. The music is still tense. Everything is there to make you experience the movie the way it was intended. Now, Bill and I know each other for about 10 years or so now. But when we were talking about this, and he said, "Oh, I lived up in in North Jersey," and I said, "I went to school in North Jersey, and I saw Alien at this movie theater." He goes, "So did I." I said, "I saw it the first Friday that it was open." He goes, "So do I," with my dad. And I'm like, "Well, do you know what time you went?" I said, "I went at the 7:00 movie." I remember specifically meeting my friend there at 7:00. And so, because I could have been there. So it's funny that we had never met before in our lives or anything, and we didn't meet obviously back then, but to have that shared experience, someone was there. So you, as a young kid, saw this. I was 20. He was what? How old were you?
I was 11, not quite
11.
12.
So, yeah. So I'm like, that is a different perspective from an adult kind of to a kid. And, I'm sure you were pretty scared. I'm pretty sure that your peanuts jumped out of your M&Ms.
Yeah. There were jumps. There were things though, like it was also like I went with my dad, and my dad was pretty scared.
Really?
My dad's favorite horror movies were werewolf movies. He would devour them. In the 80s, you had a few. American Werewolf in London, The Howling, there were a few. And I think anything outside of that was like he had not exactly a comfort level. So that was interesting to see him just like really scared at certain scenes.
Really, not too. Well, I'm gonna say not too much different than a werewolf movie.
Yeah, not that much different, but it's a werewolf.
Yeah. In space.
And Steve, I also want you to appreciate the theater that we saw this in, because this was a 935 seat theater at the time, huge. 2 levels. And, it was the first theater in New Jersey to have Dolby Stereo. It was one of the few that was equipped for 70 millimeter and things like this that we would see. We were spoiled. We really were. For stuff being so close, because not every market had that. This was where I saw King Kong and Star Wars and Close Encounters, and then it turned into a multiplex, and it was sad. Yeah. But that's also an aspect of the sentimentality behind Alien 79 for me too. Was that saw it in pretty much ideal circumstances.
Well, I do have to say thank you so much for Vince and Bill for bringing Alien 1979 to our little podcast, because this is it is one of my favorite movies as well, and I just get so excited when people want to talk about it and people love it so much, because it's there's so much to love about it.
I appreciate the invitation, Bill and Steve. I definitely could have just rattled my mouth off all night long, and you would have got sick of me. So I tried to keep it focused. But thank you. It was fun. Thank you. Appreciate it.
But I also have to say, before we sign off, it's also a film that I'm continually discovering new things about. It was only this year that I found out that the laser lights, when they land and are walking towards the eggs, those are supplied by the rock group The Who. because they were in storage in the studio next door to them. Because their drummer Keith Moon had died and they were starting up activities again. And in terms of budget, they were very gracious to lend them to the folks in the next studio. It's just like, it's amazing to me that there's still things that about this film that I'm discovering. And if people are listening to this and this puts you in that bracket, I hope we did a good job to kind of set some people off on that journey.
Thank you again for both of you. You've just listened to another episode of the Bear Cave of Terror, and if you haven't seen Alien, if you're one of the few people, or after listening to us are struck with an irresistible compulsion to watch it again, it is often streaming on Disney Plus or Hulu, and it's, of course, always available to rent or purchase digitally and on physical media, so seek those copies out if you can. And Vince, if listeners would like to get in touch, how would they do that?
Well, you could contact me at foxmulder803@gmail.com.
Excellent. And Bill, same question. If people want to get in touch with you or see more about what you do, how would they do that?
Yeah, I have a presence on Facebook and Instagram and Blue Sky and Threads. You can reach out to me on any of those. And also, they're naturally are the contact points for the Comic Book Bears podcast. And the email there is comicbookbears@gmail.com.
Awesome. And if you'd like to get in touch with the Bear Cave of Terror, you can follow us on Blue Sky and Instagram at Bear Cave of Terror, all one word, or send an email to bearcaveofterror@gmail.com. A list of sources will be available in the show notes if you'd like to learn more about Alien, including the very exhaustive documentaries that exist out there. So just remember, bring a cat to space, and you're probably going to have to rescue it from a 7-foot tall killing machine a couple times. Good night, everybody.